So when we first start to learn a new technology, maybe it's software based, maybe you're learning a new programming language, or if someone's from a different branch of engineering, maybe mechanical or electronics. So in that case, they are probably working on some hardware projects, and they at the end of learning the theory, what most students do is they build a product or they build a project, which essentially is some kind of product because the end result is maybe it's a software, an application, and web page or anything, or if it's some mechanical or electronic device. So it's a device that has some functionalities. So in a way, that's a product. But there's a difference between the products, the projects the products that come out of these projects and the products that are being made by businesses. The main difference is that if when a business is building a product, the first thing that comes into their mind is the target audience. So every decision goes through that perspective, which is not the case when you're building a project. Because when you're building a project, it's just you're trying to practice your skills. You might build some features because you know that skill, because you know how to do it, or you want to practice and see whether I can do it or not. But when a business is building a product or business is building a feature into a product, it's not because they're trying to show off. It's because they're trying to come up with a solution that's actually useful to the user. So in summary, what I'm trying to say is that the the target audience, is at the core of the decision-making process when a business builds a product. So that's what I'm going to talk about here. So what I'm going to talk about is product management, and I'm going to give a big picture overview of these things. So there are some terminologies that I'm going to cover, so I'm going to lay it out right in front at the beginning so that you have an idea about when I mention those things. Those are product management, product strategy, product market fit, and go-to-market strategy. So these are the four things that I'm going to cover. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that there is a theoretical way to define things, and the other thing is that how it happens practically inside a company in practice. So during this explanation, I might talk about different roles and different steps. And what happens in reality is that it's not that every company follows these exact steps. For example, it's not that every company has a team that follows each of the particular steps. So instead of thinking in terms of steps or in terms of the departments, which departments or which employee is responsible for which step, think in terms of processes. Because regardless of the which team is responsible for what, one thing is certain is that all the steps are necessary. So depending on company to company, one company may do two, three steps might be done by the same employee or the same team. While if it's a bigger company, that same one task might be divided among multiple teams. So it all depends upon the size and scope of the company. But what remains the same is the sequence of things that has to happen. That will happen. Whether it's done by one single person or a team of 100 people, depends from business to business. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So here I'll talk mostly about the process. Now, how it happens in company to company depends on the individual company.
Mm.
Okay, so as I've started with product management, so that's the First thing that I can start with. So how could we define this? So basically, so product management is the process of figuring out what to build and why to build it. Because those questions has to be asked, because any feature or any functionality that you add into a product has to answer like, why am I even introducing this thing, and how to and what to do it in the first place. And the person responsible for this is called the product manager. So that's obvious. So broadly, how does the product manager know what to do? So the things, normally the steps that they take are, they talk to the customers, or they take polls of some sort, or maybe they even might do some data-driven analysis of certain kind. So basically, in this step, they try to learn from the customer. And after that, once they learn what they might prefer, the second step is that they decide what features to build and what not to build, so that it satisfies what the customer needs, which they had figured out in the previous step while interacting with the customers. And once they figure out what features to build and not to build, then they'll then pass it on to the engineering team, which then they will build it. So the product manager is not necessarily the engineer. It may be that the engineer can be involved in the process, or maybe an engineer can be a product manager, but the job role itself doesn't require engineering skills, because that will be done by the technical team. The product manager's job is to figure out. He's more of a he's more on the business side of things, not in the engineering side of the product thing. Okay, so that's the overall concept of what's product management and what the product manager does. So that's the theoretical definition. And product strategy then, it's simply how you implement those things. So it's a matter of definition. Product management and product strategy is the broadly is the same thing. Product management is the process of coming up with the plan. Strategy is about implementing the plan. So it's just a matter of theoretical definitions. So in practice, it's the same thing. It's a continuum. But what's more important to understand is the difference between product strategy and business strategy. Because the business strategy of a company is the broader strategy. And so a company might have multiple products within its portfolio, if particularly if it's a bigger business. And obviously, if it's a startup, I think the product strategy and the business strategy would be more or less the same, because they are starting with only one product, only one service that they're offering. For example, take Zepto. If Zepto, when they started, that's the only thing that they had. So that's the only thing. Maybe a better example would be like Swiggy, because now Swiggy has different things, like they have the 10-minute delivery thing, then they have the food delivery, or maybe Zomato. Now Zomato also are expanding into like movies, theaters, or something, those kind of things. So those are different products. Now this now in so when Zomato was beginning, so there was very little difference between product strategy and business strategy. But now there's a difference, because their strategy for the Zomato food delivery app versus their Blinkit, which is the 10-minute delivery app. What is it called? What is this category called? Uh, quick
Commerce.
commerce. Yes, quick commerce versus maybe the movies tickets, all of those kind of things. So they have now different products. So each product might have different strategies. So different product managers might be responsible for it, which is different from the business strategy, which is maybe done by the CEO level people, the CXOs. So the CXOs will have a broader company strategy, which they will then pass it down to the respective product managers, and they'll say that, okay, how can your product help us achieve this bigger goal? So now they will have to come up with those kind of things. So one example that I can think of is Spotify. So maybe I'm not sure, but 6, 7 years ago, they started to introduce podcasts in their applications. Earlier, it was completely a music app, just for music. But then they decided that, okay, maybe you should also enter the podcast aspects as well, because it's sort of a competing thing, because you might either choose to listen to music, or maybe if you're bored of listening to music, then okay, I'll listen to some podcasts, which actually is true, because sometimes when I'm traveling, I switch between music and podcasts. I think most of people do. So if from Spotify's point of view, if Spotify didn't have podcast services, that means people will switch their apps. They will not be at Spotify anymore if they're not listening to music. So they have decided to bring in so they're thinking that, okay, why should our users switch it? Why not bring podcast services into our own app? So that's the thing. But this is not a product level strategy. This is a higher level business level strategy, because when they decided to do this, they also acquired some other podcast apps. I think Anchor FM, and there's some few podcast apps that they acquired, and they signed all the deals with Joe Rogan. That was very famous exclusive deal. I think now it's no longer exclusive. I think he's back on YouTube. But I think about 4 or 5 years he was exclusive to Spotify. So those are broader business level strategies. So what is the product level strategy here? So once the business level strategy has been decided that, okay, we are going to introduce podcast feature within our app too. Now it's the job of the product manager to come up with how to integrate both the music features and the podcast features within the same platform, same application, or whether there should be same application or different applications also, because that's also another question. Should it be in the same application or different application? Why I thought about this is because of Zepto Cafe. Do you have those kind of Zepto Cafe in Chennai?
Yeah, it is there.
Okay. So Zepto and Zepto Cafe has different apps currently, but
No,
recently, I think a few
it is there inside Zepto itself in here. I don't know about there,
okay. Can you
but
check?
that instant, yeah,
Maybe.
like the quick commerce thing, the cafe. There's two, three other sections. All of those are in the same app, and it comes in the same delivery.
Okay. So that is correct. Like within the main Zepto app also there is the a cafe feature as well. But here I didn't know that it was only in Bangalore maybe. But there is a separate app for Zepto Cafe. But I have recently I've come across a message within the Zepto app that they are planning to merge it into a single app. So that was already there. Like you could order Zepto Cafe from the Zepto app itself, but they also had a different app. Maybe what I think is that maybe initially when they were starting this feature, they created a different app for that, and now they're slowly integrating it into a single app. So maybe that could be the reason. Let me see if I can show you. Oh, it's not, that message is not showing now, but at some point it was showing. So my point here is that this is a strategic decision. Like whoever is in charge of Zepto's product strategy, whoever is the product manager, he or she had to think like whether this cafe thing should it be in the same app or different app. So obviously they initially decided it to be a different app. And from the messaging, the notification that I'm getting, now I think they're changing the strategy. Now I know it's better to keep it in the same app. So these are the kind of strategies that are being made by the product managers with the ultimate goal of uh, making the user's experience smoother. So yes, that's the overall idea behind this. So obviously, Spotify's product manager also had to go through this thing, whether to include it in the same app or a different app. I think they never had a different app. It was always in the same app. But even when if it's in the same app, now how do you manage the layouts? Also, whether to introduce video podcasts or audio podcasts. Those kind of different questions are there. So those are the kind of product level strategies that they have to think about. Now comes the third terminology, product market fit. Now this is mostly applicable for a new startup or some or even a established company bringing in a new product, entirely new product. So what you have to do here is that, so I mentioned in the first step that the product manager first figures out what the customer might want through direct interviews or maybe data analysis or some kind of thing. But that is still passive. So what you have done is that you have gathered the data about what a user might want or what the customer might want, and you build the initial prototype. Now your goal is to take that prototype and show it to the customers, the initial customers, and check their response. Like they whether they're just using it for once and leaving it, or maybe they're using it for continuously. So that's this test for the product market fit. I think that term itself says what it's trying to say, whether the product is fit in the market or not. So, for example, if a product is just being used once or twice, and then people refuse to use it anymore, that means it's not fit enough. I think there was a figure, I'm not sure whether that's accurate or not. So it says that maybe if when you initially test the product and if about 40 to 50% users are using it, then you can consider it to be product market fit. But I'm not sure about that number or whether it is generally acceptable percentage or it's just a specific, just some people use it. But my guess would be that it's the management's decision. Like if they think, okay, if 40% of people regularly using it is enough to justify our cost of moving forward, then we'll move forward with it anyways. So I think my assumption is that is the management's decision because it also depends upon the product, how much cost is associated with it. So how many bare minimum users do you need for it to go forward? So that's what I think. So once that happens, then there's the go-to-market strategy. Now, initially, I was confused between go-to-market strategy and product market fit because I'll tell you what's of the generic definition of go-to-market strategy. I have figured it out somewhere. So the generic definition, if you Google or anywhere, you'll find is that a GTM strategy is a step-by-step action plan that details how a business will launch a new product or enter a new market. I haven't, this is a different definition. I'll come to you why this is different from what I just said. So again, let me just say what I said. A GTM strategy is a step-by-step action plan that details how a business will launch a new product or enter a new market. Now, when I first read this definition, it sounds like it's a product launch effort. It's a product launch campaign. So I thought it okay, GTM means product launch campaign. But then I realized no, product launch campaign is a subset of the GTM go-to-market strategy. So go-to-market strategy ideally remains for the entire lifetime of the product, as long as the product exists. I think usually for most products, because normally what would happen is that if you just launch a product with a lot of fanfare and then you completely cut off marketing and advertisement, then people will soon forget, because the simple thing reason to forget is that other companies will not uh, reduce their marketing efforts. So they will forget, that their recall will be gone because you have stopped marketing. So you have to continuously keep marketing and advertising a product as long as it's there. And obviously over time, how you're advertising a product will change. But the fact that remains is that you have to keep doing it. So GTM is the overall big picture plan for a specific product throughout it and its entire lifespan. Okay, so I've given a definition, but I haven't connected it here. So suppose a product passes this test, the product market fit. Suppose there is enough users to justify to that okay, it's enough for us to start launching the product at a mass scale. So once they get the confirmation at the product market fit stage, then they come to the go-to-market strategy phase, where they come up with detailed plans. Okay, now which will also include the product launch phase as well. So I was talking to one of my colleagues at work who worked somewhere else previously, and he talked about mostly about the product launch thing. So he said, okay, suppose when you are launching a product, the campaigns start at the SEO level. He was talking about the SEO level. Suppose you're launching a product, so you have to start writing blogs, start posting Instagram posts about that product 2 3 months earlier, so that by the time you're launching, the search engines, the social media algorithms are already fed with those posts, with those content, and it becomes popular enough. I think it is very, before any movies, you always see it. Like all the actors are going on this TV shows and talk shows, and nowadays even podcasts. I think I saw Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, I think, in Joe Rogan's podcast for promoting a movie, which is okay, which is like new, because earlier normally they go to like the late night talk shows like Jimmy Fallon and those kind of people for promoting the movies now. But now, since podcasts are becoming mainstream, so now they're also choosing those things. But that's for movies. For example, and there are evidences. Like for Avengers, the new Avengers movie. What was the name? I forgot. And not Endgame. I forgot. Like, but they're releasing trailers from a few months back. I don't think it will be launched. I'm not even sure when it will be launched. Let me just look at it. Okay, the movie is Avengers Doomsday. What's its release date? Okay, so Doomsday will be released on December 18, 2026. So at the end of this year. But if you look at these mini trailers and all of those things, I think it has been there since a year ago. So this is all building up to the main thing. So technically, these are all part of the go-to-market strategy. It's for movies, but it's still a business. The movie is their product. So this is all part of the go-to-market strategy. And there are certain things, in certain scenarios, it can also happen organically, because certain products or certain things have a organic fan base. So those organic fan base helps because Marvel has there are a lot of YouTube channels who are just Marvel fans, and they will keep talking about it anyways. Even if Marvel officially doesn't do any advertisement, it's still enough. Whatever the fan YouTubers talks about it through it, that will still be enough for a lot of to create a lot of hype about the movie. Same goes for products like Apple or many other products. They have dedicated fan YouTube channels, social media platforms. So unofficially, those hype cycle is always there. So I'm not sure if it's officially part of the go-to-market strategy, but it definitely helps their go-to-market strategy, go-to-market efforts. So, o- so basically, what go-to-market strategy is the formal strategy of getting a product into the market. It's not like, okay, we made a product, we'll now list it on Amazon and hope that someone buys it. It's not like that. It's like, okay, no, we have to come have a detailed plan. Like how many months ago from which we are going to start posting relevant social media content. If we are going to get some celebrity to endorse our product, like it's a official strategy. Let me see if I can share this thing and see what are the steps involved in go-to-market strategy. Well, as per this, I mean, here you must say it looks like there are certain overlap between other things because it says define the target customer. I think the product manager, when designing the product itself, had decided the target customer. So research the market and competition. I think the product manager already does this while creating the product. But I would assume that because the GTM team is different from the product strategy or product management team, they will have to do this. But I would assume that the product team would at least transfer this knowledge, this kind of information to the GTM team. They must do this. Otherwise, yes, as I said this, I remember during the research process, I actually asked this question to AI, and that I got the response that I got was that it requires good communication between these two teams because a miscommunication will affect the GTM's result. Because if the product team has built a product based on a certain target customer and a certain market, but they are not able to communicate this to the GTM team, and the GTM has come up with a different target customer and a different market, and they are now launching this product to a different market. This will cause a mismatch, and the product launch will not be successful. So this, so that's why the communication between the team must be good, so that this kinds of misalignment doesn't occur. But I think these are the things that are mostly done by the GTM team. Like because the GTM is the pure marketing kind of thing, which is more uh, connected to the customers. Because now they will plan the advertisement campaigns. Like now since the product is there, they will come up with the strategy about okay, what kind of advertisements do should we create and so on. They will also like think about the pricing, like how much price should be enough and so on, those kind of things. Another thing, important thing that they handle is the distribution channels and the promotion channels. Because you might see that certain products are only available online, certain products are only available on store, or certain products are only available through their own website, not in other places. Or in certain cases, certain products are sold through through influencer marketing. So who comes up with this strategy? Like who decides, like, should we do it online only, or both online and offline, or should we include influencers? The GTM team decides those kind of things. So this is their, as I just previously said, it's not just okay, we created a product, we'll just put it on Amazon and I hope that someone buys it. No, we need a proper game plan of how to reach our customers. The GTM team is responsible for this game plan. So that's broadly a big picture overview of product management and how a product, the whole life cycle of a product within a company, from the inception to its how it's sold to the customer, potential customers. Now, just one final thing I want to say, which I had a question when I was covering this. Is this, let me just share the screen again. Now, I talked a lot about go-to-market strategy and how this is the whole objective is to reach the customers. But we never thought about this thing. Product market fit also requires customers, not at that scale, mass scale, but it also requires customers. So what happens after you build a product? How do you get this kind of customers? Because you think yourself, suppose you created an app or at your room. Now you need at least some people. But some people, it doesn't mean your friends and families. Like 10, 15 people is not enough. You'll need at least a few hundred people or a few thousand people. So just by sharing with your friends and family is not enough. So you'll need a strategy for this as well. How to reach a bare minimum amount of audience so that you can test the product market fit. So this is where it's it's sort of a pre-GTM strategy. It's not the strategy to get the fully validated product into the market, but it's a strategy to get the prototype into the market so that at least some users can test it. So this is mainly done through something called, there are many ways. One of the ways is called founder-led sales. Let me see if it's possible to show. Okay, I will change the share screen. Okay, so that's the question that I had as well. So how does the product initially gets introduced to the potential customers if that's not part of the GTM? So what I was saying that, so the question that I was trying to ask is that GTM is the strategy to to launch the product once it has been validated at the product market stage. But what about getting the prototype into the product to the first batch of audiences to test the product market fit in the first place? How is it possible to get that? So these are the ways. I think the most common example is the founder-led sales. That means the founder himself or herself, they go and try and they sell it personally. There are a few examples that I found here. So as you could see, Zepto's co-founder, Adit, he stood outside the apartment complexes, spoke to residents, and personally convinced him to try the app. Like you are like a door-to-door salesman at that stage. And you have to be because that's your first product. So you have to go to people, you have to talk to them and introduce a product to them. So this is how it happens in the first stage. So similarly, for Cred, I think, yeah, for him, his connections definitely did help because Cred is a application which is more for high net worth individuals, not for the general public. But okay, similarly, if you look at this kind of product for Razorpay, they did it through cold call and cold emails, just mass email to a lot of people. Now, if you look at some American companies, I think this is similar to what Zepto did. So Airbnb's co-founder, co-founders, they personally went to New York, knocked on the doors of their early hosts, photographed their apartment themselves, and helped them write listings. So they were physically present there. So they uh, were doing it on a personal level to get the initial customers. So that's how you test product market fit. That's how you get to customers to test product market fit. So I think Stripe, have you heard of Stripe?
Yeah, it is some kind of payment thing, right? Or is it
Yes.
something different?
Yes, it's some kind of payment thing. I don't think it's available in India. Or maybe it's a B2B kind of thing. Not for, but anyways, it's a payment. So how did they do it? Even they do this. They went to hackathons and personally onboarded developers. So again, personally going to people and helping them install their own software in their application and on their laptop and showing how it works and so on. Same for DoorDash. DoorDash is the Zomato of USA. I think it's the other way around actually. Zomato is the DoorDash of India because they did it earlier, I assume. So what they did, so they just created a simple website with scanned menus from local restaurants. No restaurant partnerships, no technology, just a PDF menu and a phone number. When the orders came in, the founders delivered the food themselves. Only after validating demand did they build the actual platform. So as you could see, for the earlier stages, the founders have to put in a lot of work and effort to get the initial batch of customers to see whether what they're building is even worth it to continue. So that's the answer that I found.
So these are all startup stories, but what about an established company coming up with a new product?
That's a lot easier because you can already put in those kind of things within your own app. So uh, think about Gemini for Google. It was so easy for them to introduce Gemini for Google because they already had Google search. I think I don't remember exactly how they integrated these things, but for Google to put in Gemini is much more easier because they can always put it within their own existing platform. I think the same goes for the examples that I gave about Zepto. I think Zepto initially they were quick commerce deliveries, which is mostly groceries and any other things. They did not do quick restaurant things, not cooked foods. So when the time came to introduce cooked foods services, the Zepto Cafe, they already have one channel through which they can communicate. So I think it's much easier for them, for someone who has, because you already have a certain category of target audience for them. You can then use that thing.
But also depending on the product itself, I think not all startups will require this GTM step because, like maybe for example, OpenAI they just came up with ChatGPT at the time and it just blew up.
Yes,
Maybe that is the anomaly or the exception. But
yes, you're correct. Uh, no, you're correct in saying that not every product requires that. So this is a general framework for understanding how things usually work. Obviously, ChatGPT, I don't think it ever required a GTM strategy, but I do think it requires a GTM strategy when it comes to enterprise adoption, because B2B sales requires a lot of calling your clients, setting up meetings, having connections, and so on. So that definitely requires a proper strategy for that, because you have to talk one-on-one to your clients and say that how our product can be integrated into your ecosystem, how you can keep your data structured, I mean safe, not get leaked, and so on. So for that, I would assume that they might have some kind of specific GTM strategy. But obviously for the consumer app, no, they did not have any GTA. Most likely, they did not have any formal GTM strategy. I think their product, what was that? Product market fit step was the product launch itself. That was enough. And again, the companies like Tesla, when I think whenever, let's say Optimus robot. So it's in its early phase right now. So, okay, so now that we have an idea about this framework of how a product comes from idea to mass market, now we can look at real examples and see where they are right now. So let's look at, as I said, Optimus. So what do you think? Where is it right now? Even
I
I'm
don't
trying to think.
remember all the steps.
I mean, first of all, you gather the product manager, first of all, assesses the market and thinks like, what product can I build so that it solves a market problem? That's the thing. And then they come up and then they build it. Now once they build it, they need a certain group of early testers. Early testers, I think there are also different levels of testers. What I'm when I mean early testers, I mean the early real testers, not specified expert testers, like a subset of the real world audience, which is where they assess the product market fit, whether it's good enough to go into full production or not. And once that happens, then they go towards full production and they launch it publicly, widely through the GTM strategy, and they continue to maintain it. So I think definitely now they have a product, something they have built something, a robot. Now they are, I don't think it does anything practical, useful currently. It's mostly ornamental. It's just for show because uh, there isn't enough. I mean, there's no model or operating system that can operate a humanoid robot in in the real world currently. They are collecting lots of data. So I think they're trying to, yes, it doesn't fit the generic description here. I was about to tell they're testing product market fit, but that's not true because they haven't even decided a proper use case yet. It's just a robot. It's just there.
Mm.
So I think,
Right now, it is
right,
just for optics. I think it is showing there. it is for investor sentiment, I feel like.
Yes. And I think they're also assessing the market reaction, like how are people, what's people's perception about robots, humanoid robots, and yeah, that could be it, because they have not mentioned any specific use cases. But unlike that, the company figure, they have a specific use cases. I think I recently saw a video of a figure two or figure three robot completing 200 hours of that sorting thing continuously. So at least maybe let's see if I can see a video. So this was the listeners, this is not the exact video. So I think for Figure, I think they are at the product market fit stage right now, because I think they partner with BMW or something. Or but basically what they're doing is that through this kind of demonstrations, they're showing that yes, this product can do things, like it can do things, but they have not launched it properly. So they are still at the product market fit stage currently. Because product market fit is also about tweaking things. Because when you first launch it into the product market fit stage, it's just the basic products. Like, okay, for example, when you first, uh, suppose you have built a coding app through coding. So when you hit run for the first time, there might be some semicolon or something missing. So you need a further tweak, or maybe when you look at the user interface, the button is a little bit left, a little bit right. So certain tweaking is required. So this kind of things they are doing maybe at this stage for the robotics. Like maybe, okay, use cases. Okay, first they have decided, okay, we are going to go into industrial use cases, not at home use cases. But exactly where in the industrial use case? I think through this example, it looks like they have now defined it very specifically, sorting packages within industrial use cases. So they are now in that phase. That's what I think is happening here. So I think what I have to do, or what we can do is that now that we have this theoretical framework, now whenever we see some product, try to interpret it through that lens. And over time, we can get better at understanding what's the level at which the product is. And so that's all I had to talk right now. Anything else to say?
I don't really have anything.
Okay, so I'll stop recording now.